You're tuning in to Radio Movies, a special event podcast in collaboration between the Explosion Network, the Pop Culturist, and Dash Culture. Each week we'll be discussing the films from the Kevin Smith Askew universe, our memories with them, why we love them, and preparing ourselves for the upcoming Jane and Silent Bob reboot. My name is Dylan Blight, and joining me from the Pop Culturist, Ryan Betson.
Hey, man.
Hey, man. And from Dash Culture, Buddy Watson.
Okay. I've had my finger up my ass. I wouldn't say I've had anal sex.
Now that I know it's a thing, I'm like, and what's he gonna say?
And now you have that great audio bite of me saying that.
Yeah, the best thing is that because I'm editing this thing, it's not like I have to strip it out of the podcast either. I can just take your solo audio file and just stick that up on SoundCloud and do what I need to do.
There's a lot of trust we've put in Dylan here.
Turn it into a dubstep song. And my fingers up my ass. I go retcon the other 2 episodes and make that the opening theme song. Anyway, on today's episode, we are going to be talking about Chasing Amy, a film that kids these days would call rather woke. For the sake of the show, we'll be presuming that you have watched the movie, of course, and we will be talking with full spoilers. So as with every other episode, let's start with the first time that you saw Chasing Amy. How you remember feeling about it the first time you watched it, and then how you would feel, how you feel about the movie today. Because this was one of the last ones I watched of the Askew thing. I think it was probably second last to Clerks when I originally watched it, and at the time I watched all the movies, Jane and Silent Bob was the most recent release. So that's how it all works up. And I really didn't like it because I was watching all these movies when I was like 12. And I can come out and say it straight away. I found this a very odd movie. I didn't get any of the humor. It was probably one of the more adult-orientated movies I think I'd watched as a 12-year-old. It was tackling a lot of subjects that I just simply couldn't comprehend, whereas I was watching all these other ones like Mallrats and Jane and Silent Bob and even Dogma. Like I wouldn't be able to fully comprehend then, but it still had a lot more stuff that it's like, oh, there's angels and demons and there's some more Kevin Smith level humor and stuff in it. And then also I can just come out and say it, like around 12 years old or whatever, like I knew what gay people was sure. It was a thing that bullies called me on the school playground, like, you're gay. And I also knew from and obviously my views are a lot different now and whatever else, but like growing up, family members calling stuff, oh, that guy's a poofter and all this sort of stuff. To me, gay was a very negative connotation still at this age, So, and also still at the age where it's like, but lesbians is cool because lesbians is a completely different thing. Very male upbringing, I suppose. You know what I mean? Like, it's like lesbians are hot, cool, and like, gay dudes, ew, no, I don't want any of that sort of stuff. So yeah, this movie was quite weird to watch because it's because it purposely addresses the very bro mentality of lesbians are hot and gay dudes, all that sort of stuff. It like addresses that front on, and I can definitely say as a 12-year-old I was just like, I don't understand, this movie's kind of weird, I don't know the point of it, I don't find any jokes funny or whatever else. These days, like I rewatched it for this, I think it was way ahead of its time. But saying that, I think it was ahead of its time, but at the same time, if it released now as it is, like script for script, it would cop a lot of slack for a lot of stuff, if it was to release today. So I feel like it should have come out like mid 2000s or something. You know what I mean? Like if it came out now, no, but it came out still way too ahead of its time. But I still think a lot of the themes and stuff that it addresses, especially like the head-on tackling of like woke frat boy type mentality of what a gay woman is, what a lesbian is, and whatever else, that sort of mentality and stuff. There's still sorts of people who could watch this movie like frat boy types and would be like, find it somewhat weird, confronting, especially like when I talk about my one of my favorite scenes later, which is the whole lesbian sex explanation that Ben Affleck gets in this, because I feel like that a lot of people say that scene's like weird and whatever to watch, but I'm like, yeah, but it's been written to a certain audience who just don't understand, I guess. So I I would say out of all of Kevin Smith's movies, if you rewatch, this one probably is his best writing, I think, for sure. Like not his best comedy stuff, but his best writing. Buddy, when was the first time you watched it? How do you feel now?
Pretty much with you. I think this is one of the later movies that I'd watched of his. I think I was a lot older than 12 at that time.
Yeah,
my initial reaction was that it was amazing. Unlike any of the other Kevin Smith movies that I'd seen before, so I really wasn't kind of knowing what to expect. I loved how real it felt, and there are tropes in it, definitely, but I feel like it addresses some tropes and a lot of the taboo discussions that they have in that, but they do it in quite a way that's not predictable, in a sense, in some of the discussions, and they treat it with great care. And I really, that's what's kind of stood out to me. And what you said before about the writing, I think I totally agree with that. So I can't really pinpoint what year or when I saw it or anything like that, but on my initial view, I loved it. And to this point now, spoilers, I guess, it's probably up there with my favorite Kevin Smith movies. I think I did a ranking the other day. It's my second, maybe third. I don't know. It's either one. Sorry, it's either one or two between it and Mallrats. But it's apples to oranges, so it's kind of really hard to pit them up against each other, like you would maybe a Clerks or a Mallrats. So
you wouldn't believe the same person that made Mallrats made this movie, really.
Yeah, that's right.
Ryan, when was the first time you watched it? How do you feel about it now? You kind of teased previously you've got a little bit more history of this movie than Mallrats and stuff. So
yeah. So I first saw this when I was 19, around about 18, 19. So in terms of the big story beat of round about sort of like gay culture and that sort of stuff, that really was an issue for me. Like my father is openly gay, so that world is not new to me. So there was no surprise. There was no like, all those frat boy moments as you sort of mentioned. So like, I have an advantage of like, oh, cool, I understand this movie. But this is by far like my second. I would say number one is Clerks 2. I mentioned that last time. This is number two. Like unquestionably, this movie is fucking brilliant. Watching it, as sort of Buddy said, like it feels real. This is the movie where Kevin really had something to say, and this was the unleashing of a dude's inner thought and just like inner emotion. And I thought that really touches a lot to me, because as I mentioned, like although the movies are full of like dick and fart jokes and they're very funny and they kind of push boundaries, I really like the underlying of it all, and that includes the bromancy side of things and how to, you, especially in that time in like the mid 90s where, bromances weren't like as I say commonplace because they existed, but they weren't addressed as well. So, in the end of that film where they have this weird thing, like maybe is, there's this weird sort of relationship between us that's more than friends and you need to address that. So it's like, I know I'm rambling. It's just because it's difficult for me to put into words this movie. This movie hits me in many, many ways.
What's the key thing or things or that hits for you in this then?
I think this movie, because I'll admit I grew up a very lonely teenager. Like I didn't have many partners or anything, and I'm definitely someone who, as a person, is more complete with a partner. So with the big hunk of this movie is that first, the big first half of that movie is a lot about like longing for someone that can't reciprocate in that way. So I resonated with a lot of that movie, especially, we'll get into our favorite scene shortly, but that scene with Ben Affleck, when delivering that scene to Joey Lauren Adams in the car, which is one of my favorite things in the world, because that is the speech that I guarantee you every fucking fat dude in high school was wanting to unleash on someone. So that hit me really home in that sense, and then later the final line of that monologue even appeared in my vows from my wife. So that alone is means a lot to me. There has been people in the past that I watched this movie with, and they didn't like it, and I instantly changed my thoughts on them as a person.
Deleted them from your life.
No, I'm not even joking. Genuinely.
I feel like that's me for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, let's get into it then. Might as well start with you since you're kind of on it. Like, we'll go for everyone's favorite scene and stuff. So, do you want to talk through the speech, the car scene, whatever you call it, and then because you keep teasing it, I do want to know how that ends up being such a big part of your marriage.
You are the epitome of everything I have ever looked for in another human being. And I know that you think of me as just a friend, and crossing that line is the furthest thing from an option you would ever consider, but I had to say it.
So Holden is in a car with Joey Lauren Adams, and they've just gone to dinner and they bought this painting. She bought him this painting, so she'll always remember him by. And they're having this conversation in the car, and then it's almost like a boiling point moment where Ben Affleck's character then proceeds to profess his love to her in this beautifully written monologue. That's all just this idea of it's just this almost this cathartic unleashing of like, this is everything I've ever thought, like regardless of what happens today, I don't need no painting, my life has been, the one line is, my life has been forever changed. My life has been forever changed just by having you in it, essentially. Is not the exact quote, but it's pretty much that. And, that means a lot to me on a very, very, very personal level. And it's become part of my marriage. So as I mentioned, the two things about my wedding are very Kevin Smith related. One is that line, because my wife is someone that's not very good at articulating her feelings. So although my vows were very, gushy, because I'm very in tune with my emotions, where she's not. So her entire vows were just quotes from movies. So I told.
So does she like these movies too, or was she picking it because she knew you like it?
That was one of the other reasons why I knew that I knew that my wife was the one.
The one.
It came from when we started, just before we even really started dating at that point. It was very early days. She knew I was a big fan, and she went out of her way to watch all of them without me, just to understand me better. And yeah, that's very special to me. One of the first things we did when we started dating, actually, we flew over to Adelaide to see Jay and Silent Bob Get Old, and it's one that Mosier came down for Smodcast. So, Kevin Smith in general plays a massive part of my life, and that's it. But this movie particularly, because I think it just touches some really raw shit, and in the same way that Clerks 2 touches some raw shit for me. So we'll get to that. Chasing Amy is just fucking awesome. But that scene in particular, rad. I have a couple other scenes. I love the Star Wars rant from the start from Hooper X. The whole what's a Nubian? Yeah, that big fan, big fan. But I feel like I'm talking nonstop. Feels like forever. So one of you guys jump in there.
That's the point of this podcast, really. That's what I want, these stories. Buddy, what would your favorite scene be from this one then? And you better match that story. That's what I'm saying. You got
That's right. Yeah, I can't. I'm not going to be able to match that. My vows were, you're gushing and telling all your feelings, and my vows over here were like a stand-up routine, really. Even Rick rolled Kim in mine. So
sounds like something you'd do. So.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, favorite scene. It's so much harder for me to identify a scene in this movie that's a standout favorite compared to all the other ones, because of the comedic nature of the films. With this one, it's just, there's so many. Like the scene you just described, Ryan. I don't know if it's my favorite, but definitely when they're sitting on the couch at the end and he's kind of pulled them in to have the discussion in what he thinks could salvage this relationship or make things better, and also improve relationships between Alyssa and Banksy. It's weird. I don't know if it's it's such a train wreck to watch that scene.
Yeah.
And kind of comprehend how he came to that decision to be the answer and the solution. So
but the perceived clarity on his face really helps because it's like
that's right. And we just had the scene before that where kind of Kevin Smith and Silent Bob has given his kind of awesome story about chasing Amy and and right after that, that's what Holden takes from that story.
Yeah.
That instead of accepting that she wants to be with you in her part of the life now and you should cherish that, takes that he needs to have one of those experiences to kind of get even, and then they can live happily ever after. It's so cringeworthy to watch, and how it kind of all breaks down, and Alyssa on the couch through the whole thing, like, don't say it. Is quite full on. So that's
the best part of that scene to me is the part at the end where she stands up, hugs him or kisses him or whatever she does, and says, she's like, I love you, but then fucking slaps him right across the face and it's like, but I'm not your whore, and then walks out. I was like, oh, it's like the first time you watch it, you're like, oh, like, fuck.
Yeah. I was actually going to end the podcast with that one. And that's what that was my favorite moment as well in that part. It's like, I love you. I always will. Know that. But I'm not your fucking whore. Yeah. And I love that. The only other
I wish my wife put that in her vow. That would have been awesome. That would have been way better.
The only other thing that can kind of come close to that for me is the very end when it's 1 year later.
Yeah.
Or is it 6 months later, 1 year later?
It's a year later, I think,
Yeah. Jason Lee's character's just at the Comic-Con or whatever the convention, and he spots Holden from across the room, and he does the shared moment. Thing with his hands, and it's so funny because earlier in the movie he's like, yeah, we shared a moment, and it's just so telling because
he loves me.
Yeah, he thinks that's a shared moment, and he doesn't actually really understand what a proper shared moment is. That is life changing. And at the end, when he does the shared moment by pulling his two index fingers together, he gets it. He understands what an actual shared moment means, and I guess they both do.
But even in that final scene, just some extra subtleties. Like at the start of the film, it is almost a parallel shot to the opening of the movie, and you'll notice, like, I think there's a woman dressed as like a Borg, and she has a partner, and like people are sort of paired up in the final shot. It's very cool.
And what about yourself, Dylan?
Yeah.
So I teased it before. My favorite scene is the 101 on lesbian sex, because, and I think it always just stands out to me because, as I said, I'm like 12 watching this and I'm like, excuse me?
Well, where's the penetration in lesbian sex? A finger? Okay, I've had my finger up my ass. I wouldn't say I've had anal sex.
Observe.
You're kidding me.
Even rewatching it, as I was saying, I love the way that scene's written, because I think to anyone
that's a shared moment.
That's a shared moment. I think this scene today wouldn't work as well, because it would kind of be like, look, we've all got the internet. We all know, like, you know, for a start. But this film's like written in a point of time, and I think the way it's written is just, it's kind of written dumbish, because I do think Kevin Smith's literally speaking to, that's what I'm saying, frat boy types and stuff, and it's like, you know, it's like the dumbest thing, like, because Ben Affleck's asking the dumbest questions, like, how do you do that? Like, how big's your tongue? And all this sort of like.
Yeah, but it's this weird almost exchange with himself, if, you know, from a writing perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Like he's, well, that's a lot of Kevin Smith. Like, we'll even discuss that like next week with Dogma a bit, like speaking to himself. It's like, even in Clerks too, I guess, like there's some aspects of kind of opening up and discovering himself as he goes. But I think out of all Kevin Smith movies, this one is the hardest to pick one standout scene, because it's such a like normal isn't the right quote for it. It's
conventional.
Yeah, it's more conventional. There's no like standout like big comedy moment to me. It's like if I wasn't going to pick this, I was nearly going to pick the Jay and Silent Bob scene, because I think that's actually really, really good. And if it wasn't that, then it's obviously like the car scene. Like there's a couple key big dramatic moments, but other than that, there's not really a heap of small one-liners or jokes where you're like, that's my favorite thing. It's like there's like three pillars of like these big emotional moments in the movie, and then the end, obviously, which you pick, buddy. So it's like there's not as many choices to go for favorite moments, but yeah,
there's more through lines than one scene. Like I was saying before, the shared moments. The other through line that I really like, but I can't pick because it's not really one scene, is their use of the word faggot. And like you were saying before about, getting picked on. That just when I was at school as well, that's such a derogatory term that would be used as an insult. You'd hear that get thrown around all the time. You go into school right now, I bet you're not hearing any of that. You're not hearing retard, faggot, any of that. That's out of the lexicon. And if someone says that, they usually get pulled up. From what I've heard.
But saying that though, like like that's a word totally from a very specific time and place. But it's with its primary use from Banky, like it was great to see the progression over the film. Like as he's in a very short way, his character does grow in that time, and for that reason as well. Like as this whole thing with Alyssa and Holden goes, there are minor changes here and there, but yeah, like that language drops towards the end.
Yeah, well, for me, it was like I couldn't say, he's seen Holden when he tells him to stop using the word dyke and all that. I'm like, I can't just pick that as my favorite scene because it required so many other bits and pieces from the move, earlier on in the movement and to show the growth of him. But I love that moment where he has that moment. So, but
that's totally true. Like, how it's very fascinating how that has changed between now. If you go to a school now, like these words just don't get used in that.
Well, they might, but I just
I was gonna say like, but I think within our circle, because we're all friends, so within our circle, it just doesn't happen. Like maybe in schools, maybe that is still a thing, and I think that's kind of that just goes down to what Kevin does naturally. Like he writes how people talk, and at that time and place, that's sadly how they talk.
It's I'll say, like, if anyone in my circle was still calling shit that's gay, I wouldn't be friends with them.
I agree. Agree.
If someone ever let that slip, depending on like how well I knew them, I would not let it go, and I'd definitely point out, I'm like, did that slip out of like some weird old habit or something, sort of thing like that, because like I the last time I called stuff gay when I was in high school, I would be like, "Oh, that's gay." You fucking, vending machine doesn't put a spit my coke out. Oh, why is the vending machine gay? Like you think back on it, you're like, none of this shit makes any sense. But that's just how everyone fucking talks.
Yeah, see that's the thing. Like that's the power. Like we're getting a whole different side topic here, but that's the power of words, right? So like because of my my situation with my father, like those were words that never used. For me, like I never use them as negative words, whatever words. But for many people, it's not what the word means. Like if someone was to call someone a faggot, they weren't calling them gay; they were just calling them that. Like it was just the word itself was just a direct insult. Where the use of it here in this movie was connecting those two shared moment, connecting those two words together in its truest form.
Yeah. Well, there was some people like, for example, the jocks in my school, like if they were to ever try and bully me, which like I'd walk around and be like, I'd walk past them and be like, "Hey, faggot," blah, blah, like all this, and they weren't saying that as a word; they were saying that as a
okay, yeah.
Like there is a clear line, and they were so they were actually using it as like a if you are you're like negative connotation stuff. So but everyone was like, "Oh, the thing gay," and you had to get rid of that out of your lexicon. I don't know when exactly I got rid of it out of my lexicon. Probably when I was like 16-ish, 17-ish or something. I feel like that. So
it's something that becomes a habit and a bad habit, and then you only ever going to get rid of it if you actively get rid of it.
Yeah, you have to try.
There'll be plenty of people around my age specifically that. And I have a friend that is so backwards, not funny, when it comes to this kind of stuff and a lot of things. And I would probably describe that friend as probably a toxic male who, believes in normal like gender roles and still uses derogatory terms like that and is just really. Yeah, I don't know how else to describe them, but they just don't give a fuck, and they're not ever going to do it, and it's really frustrating to be around him when stuff like that happens. Like, really, what are you doing?
I couldn't handle it. Like I've bumped into one. I've bumped into my ex best friend, which I've talked about on many podcasts before, like Pleasure Explosion and stuff. I haven't been friends with them since like I was 19, 20 or whatever it was, I think. But they used to be my best friend. Every now and then I'll bump into them out and about, and because we have mutual friends, but I don't talk to them unless I have to. But I remember like a month ago, bumped into him. He's drunk as fuck. No, he's on drugs, to be honest. He was on drugs. And he made like a whole thing about like, well, you know, everyone, like Bruce Jenner thinks she could be a woman, like thinks he could be a, you know, making lots of these sorts of jokes.
That's exactly my friend. You're describing my friend right now.
And it's like one of those moments of clarity though, where like I'm sitting there and I'm like, fuck, I'm happy I'm not friends with you anymore. Like, and I made zero effort. I'm like, it's one of those times where I'm not even going to bother trying to pull them up because we're in like a scenario where I wouldn't even bother doing that. Whereas if someone I was actually friends with said something like that, I would be like, what the fuck did you just say? Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's just one of those weird scenarios. Let's talk about though, like we're kind of on the subject, I guess, but this film, obviously, I can definitely say it's like, I guess the first LGBTQ film I watched technically, like if you want to put it in the genre. I don't know if you click on Netflix if it appears in the category with blue is the warmest color and whatever else, but like, but you know, it would fall under that banner. I don't think it's a film that's like accepted. Well, no, I don't think accepted, but like it's not a film that's loved by the community, I guess, because like there's been many an article written about its the way Alyssa's written, right, as a lesbian woman. The fact that the film has this kind of thing going where it's like she sets up, it's like, I'm gay, blah, 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 blah. Then you have the white dude come in who like, and being argued, it's made that the story's like, oh, but he turns her straight somehow, right? You know, this whole very negative connotation. So I kind of want to get everyone's thoughts on that because I have some ideas about that as well. Buddy wanted to bring up about the relationship, I guess, like how it actually feel, if their relationship was real or if it was, I don't know. I'll let you tackle that one in a second. And then also the other thing I want to bring in here is the thing we was teasing about just before, which is about Banky. And like, do you actually think that he was like a self-hating gay man, I guess, or was he just really homophobic bro dude or whatever else, you know? So I'll start first with the Alyssa thing to kick that off. I actually think, especially rewatching this movie recently, I just think if this movie was come out now, it's like the movie's kind of about the bisexual experience.
Yeah.
is kind of what I put under, because you have this girl who thinks she's trying to put herself in a box, is the way I watch it as. Because we find out later she has had experience with guys, but then she finds out she's into girls. So she's like she tries to put herself in that box, like, oh, I'm lesbian now, straight. You got to put myself in that box or whatever. But then the second she tells all her lesbian friends that she's with a guy again, all her lesbian friends are like, like you can't do that. Like you're no longer our friend. You can't be.
I think they said another one bites the dust was the exact.
Yeah, it was like a funeral when she told them.
Yeah, which that's what I'm saying. It's kind of like it's like the bisexual experience of everyone's asking for receipts, kind of, I guess. You know, like her lesbian friends, like, well, you can't. You're either with us or you're not with us. And then even men are like Banky, not Banky, Holden, when he finds out that she'd been with other dudes, is like, yeah, but I thought you was lesbian. You know, like you can't have been above other dudes if you're only into chicks. I thought I was the first guy. You know, like it's this whole thing. So yeah, I think I never thought about it until rewatching it now, but I definitely, when I watch this movie, I view Alyssa as I'd view her as a bi girl. Yeah. You know, that's kind of the way I'd feel about it. But Ryan, how do you feel about this film, her sexual orientation, I guess, whatever you want to put it, and it's do you think if this movie came out now, it would be like, how would it be received?
If it was shot for shot, I don't think it would be received well, but I think that comes down to particular parts of our culture. I say that in like because for the time this came out, this movie was quite progressive. in some of its ways. And I do agree with you about Alyssa. I think Alyssa it falls into that bi bracket, if anything. But I think that once again, in that time and place, like it was very, binary. Like you are straight or you are gay, or you are dude, you are girl. Like that's pretty much how it worked. Just because that nuance hadn't been accepted or even become socially aware. I don't think this movie could exist now. For a number of reasons. I think needing the dichotomy of like having someone that is incredibly homophobic to someone that is opening up to it and someone that is part of that community, I think that really works as the three of them. I think in the way our society works now, they won't. The nuance is gone, is what I'm getting at. So the way this movie is perceived, no one will be able to see the nuance. It'll just be people blaring it on Twitter unnecessarily. It's a bummer because the movie's fucking great, but I don't think it could work now.
Yeah. Buddy, how do you feel about that?
I don't think it could work shot for shot. I definitely feel like it could still work by tweaking. And the only things that they would really have to tweak is about the obliviousness, I guess, of maybe Holden and Banky with some of the, how is sex, or how does that happen, or what?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That doesn't work these days when you got the internet, is it?
Yeah,
it's like,
that's the only thing that doesn't work. I still feel him falling in love with her, and even the homophobic part for Banky can still work.
Yeah.
Also,
the point I was trying to make a minute ago, the whole idea of, as you mentioned, the idea of this man turning a woman back. I think that trope, because like that's a very,
it was a trope that people believed.
Yeah, it's a very male fantasy. That's the girl that no other guy could have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's honestly like I've had a few gay friends, and even then when they've joked around and stuff, it's even a male gay fantasy of turning a straight person.
Yeah.
Gay.
I know someone who I went to school with. I'm not friends with them. I was never friends with them, but I did go to school with them, and they're a gay man, and I know that that's what they're kind of into.
Like actively seek it out.
They actively seek it out to the point, and I'll just come out and say, when I broke up with my girlfriend a couple of years ago, he messaged me on Facebook. Right?
Okay.
And I never spoke to this dude at all, and he's messaging me and asking me all this stuff. And at first, he's like, "Oh, I heard you broke up with so and such." I'm like, and at first, I'm just responding because I'm like, "This is a bit weird" or whatever. And then like a couple of days later, they're like, "Oh, I heard such and such has been messaging you. Be careful because he has a thing for wanting to get with like straight men or whatever." So yeah, I mean.
So it works. I think it works both ways with the can I turn the lesbian chick straight, and can I turn the straight man gay? I never really have come across a situation, whether it be in pop culture or heard anything in my own kind of circles, where it's the opposite with the female wanting to turn somebody.
No.
Well,
as weird as that, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that situation is this is something that sort of Dylan touched upon earlier. Forever, girl on girl has been staggeringly more socially accepted than dude on dude action. So, like, if a girl was to go kiss a girl at a party, whether she be straight, everyone would be like, "Woo!" No one's like, "That's what are you doing?"
Yes.
And that just comes down to the unrealistically proportioned social acceptance.
And it's funny in the movie here because Banky's like, "We ain't leaving right now. How many times are you going to see this live in person?"
Exactly. Yeah.
When they're both making out, and even that has that through line where he's like, I've been with chicks, but you don't care how many chicks I've been with, but all of a sudden it's one guy and you're losing your mind."
Yeah, because he thought he was the
first.
Yeah, the elusive wizard that turned her, or whatever it is.
Rick pulled his dick out. Really? What did you do?
I blew him while Chloe fucked me.
But the quick shout out to the when you're saying the lesbian girls kissing and stuff. I can't watch American Pie movies anymore because
they don't age well. I went back and watched the first one, and like that raunchy comedy doesn't really work much anyway. I think Superbad's probably the only one that kind of makes it out okay. But yeah, these movies are tough.
I'm like, it's just old jokes like that, and like even like American Pie 2, they sneak into the house and the girls are kissing, and then they make them kiss, and it's like, oh, the guys are kissing, and they're all like wanting to throw up and whatever else.
But even like Stifler as a character, Stifler is just Banky rolled up to 10. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
he's a tough character to watch now. Holy shit!
Yes. But it's so funny because like obviously when I was a kid, those movies are hilarious, but now I'm like, I don't find any of this shit funny. I'm sorry. Like, and I can't switch my mind to let's just pretend like I'm 15.
Wind it back.
Let's pretend I'm 15. Like it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. All right, so let's get on to the second thing. Buddy, you wanted to talk about like, do you want to explain what you meant by their relationship? What exactly?
Well, I really feel like. See, I didn't think Holden was ever in this movie trying to turn her.
No,
I know he is of that kind of that type of character, comes off as that character, naive and still like falling in love, and I think he's just naive himself, and when he befriends her and then he just falls in love with her anyway, and he gives that speech, I can't have you, blah blah blah. I think that speech was absolutely super selfish of him to do that.
Oh, very much so, very much so.
But I don't feel like his intention was ever to like, I'm going to befriend her so I can try and turn her type thing. Which I think was good that they did that. I just was always wondering whether she was ever fully into him. Because the way it comes off, she's been through so many experimental things. Is this just that, like, is she thinking this is the I want to settle down now and you're perfect for me, or is this just another experiment before she goes off and finds another lover, whether it be a woman or man? I was just never really sold on that. Like,
what do you reckon, Ryan?
It was a relationship of convenience of how close they became, maybe.
I think part of it's correct. I do think that, like, she sort of mentioned that there's a number of things. She's been with men in the past and they're all gross, and Holden wasn't gross. So I think there's that connection there. But but it turns out I think she genuinely, in terms of if you approach the character that way, I do certainly she genuinely felt and loved Holden, but not in that forever way. You know what I mean? That's right. I don't think it is. Like, and to add to what you said about that speech, that speech is 100% super, very super selfish. But it's one of those things, like, you just get it out. You're like, I don't care what the response, as in, like, you don't have to say anything. Just got to get it out. Very much so. But I think the added layers to that change it. But yeah, because I do agree. Like, I don't think Holden had that malice in wanting to turn her. I think he did genuinely love or / like her, and his own insecurities warped him to become that very, like, as the movie progresses and he starts seeing his own inside start eating him up, and it crumbles him from the outside, from the inside out.
I totally think he was like forever in, and maybe, and she just wasn't. Maybe I think I changed my view on that after my most recent rewatch, because I haven't watched it since I was like, I don't know, 8 years ago, probably is the last time I watched this movie. So I haven't watched it quite some time, and as I'm saying, I'm watching it for this. I'm like, I don't know, like, I think she's trying to put herself into a category, and she's bi, so, or whatever. She definitely sees gender, so yeah, she would be bi. So in that case, it's like she likes him. That's set up straight away. They get along. They have the first connection you need, which is, do you actually like talking to each other? Do you enjoy each other's company? The answer is like yes. And I think that's where she starts. And then as it progresses, I guess you can kind of spin the movie another way and say maybe she's confused. Maybe she's like having weird feelings about him and being like, but
I'm not into guys, or well, I don't like guys,
yeah.
but then why do I feel this way about him and all this sort of stuff? So I don't know, like the way I view this movie now, and saying that she's just as confused as any other character in this movie, really. It's a movie about a bunch of fucking really confused characters that don't really know shit.
Yeah, because I think
Then,
that
It's too simple to say she's a lesbian now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think part of that confusion of misconstruing your emotions for another person, I think plays a big part in both Alyssa and Banky. Like, you know, and Holden's interpretation of that relationship is, you know, because of that binary nature that they lived back in the, you know, that was the way it was back in the day. You know, if there is that sort of that bromance, your genuine love for your friend, you know, there's like, but I genuinely love this person and I need this person in my life, but does that mean that I'm in love with them? Does that make me gay? But I think that that's the big point here. And I think Alyssa, maybe whether it was intended or not, is that opposite of that. She's like, well, I'm this, like my affections for someone of the opposite gender giving the same result. So I think they're actually almost the black and white of each other.
Let's talk about Banky then, because obviously he's an interesting part of this. Where do we side on what this end of this movie kind of sets up? Because you got to remember when push comes to shove, he does agree to have the three-way. He didn't say no. So and Holden teases it. Like, I think you're you know, you got feelings for me, you got things for me, but how do you feel about it? Do we actually believe that Banky does actually have proper feelings for Holden, or do we think that was just all a bunch of nonsense kind of in Holden's head a little bit? Ryan, how do you feel about Banky?
I don't think he's gay. I don't think the character was gay. I think that was just someone not understanding their love for another man, but not in like a I want to like smooch face off kind. You know what I mean? That's how I see it. It's plain and simple. And with Holden, that's Holden's naivety to that, and he too not understanding that you can have that level of a relationship with someone of the same sex, and you don't want to have sex with them, or even someone of the same sex. You know what I mean? So that at the end, the solution is we just have to bang. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, I do think that his response of sure was more of a psych out, because the second she goes no, you see him go, oh, thank fuck. Okay. Oh, there's a headbutt the microphone.
You don't reckon he would have gone through?
Fuck no. No way. No way. Because I think that, because once again, his insecurities of his own emotions would have instantly backed him out of it. And because it was the wrong decision.
Well, yeah. Buddy, how do you feel?
I think I think he's set up to be gay throughout the whole film on the rewatch, and how often he uses homophobic slurs. Even the whole Archie and Jughead type thing.
It's still a good debate though,
which is pretty cool. It's tough. What do you went through with it? I don't know what to think. I don't think so.
It's implied at the end of Jay and Silent Bob, like when Banky and Hooper X walk out of seeing Black Men Chronic. It's implied that they're dating.
Yeah.
I see it, I guess, from my own interpretation, not whether that is he or isn't he in the whole thing, is that maybe he isn't, but that doesn't mean that he can't love Holden to the level that he does. He's been friends for so long. Maybe it is the same as having, you know, that jealousy and these feelings for Holden, but not intimate feelings, if that makes sense.
I like how you used the word of intimate rather than wanting to kiss him in the face that I used before. I couldn't think of the word, and you kind of nailed it. Thank you.
Well, see, I believe that I believe he was written as a like kind of stereotypical, like homophobic, kind of self-hating. I think it's done on purpose, is what I believe.
Yeah, I think so too.
But my views on sexuality and stuff is kind of the point where he may want to bang like every second hot woman he sees walking down the street, but then he may only also want to be like intimate like that with Holden and one other dude in his whole life. you know?
Mm.
And then people would be like, well, if you only want to do it with two dudes, then are you actually like bi, gay, straight? You know what I mean? Like people try and be like, well, you got to actually have 50-50 kind of to, you know what I mean? Like I'm of the belief that people can be like that, you know? His feelings can be so much for Holden that he may feel that way for him, but then he may go through life never feeling like that about any other man ever again. But in a different alternate reality, could him and Holden ended up together as some, if Holden felt that way about him back, I guess, sure, I'd believe that alternate reality would exist. But it's like if Holden turns him down, then he never looks at another dude like that ever again because he never has like the connection with any other dudes. He only ever has the connections with girls. So yeah, I think he's an interesting character from that point of view as well. So I'd say yes, because I think he's supposed to kind of represent at the time that very like constantly like saying faggot this blah 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 gay like all this stuff, but then whatever else.
It's a shield.
Yeah, a shield.
And it comes off as you know the first step to saying that you're an alcoholic is to admit it, and hasn't made that step yet, and you know he's not really being himself. And almost at the end when he's at the con, he looks a much more relaxed character.
Yeah.
From the start when he was at the con, so maybe he is finally who he is.
Yeah, you've interestingly got me to rethink it there, Dylan. That's actually because I was approaching it in the same way the movie does, in that sort of binary nature. Like I'm pretty open to, you know, when the lion's hungry, he eats. You do whatever you want. You know what I'm saying? But like in terms of that, yeah, no, I think you've that yeah, huh.
I guess from my perspective, I look at it and I think the way he's written, I'm like, yes, he's gay. But I guess my own personal experience looking at it, I'm like, well, you know, I've had a friendship with, you know, one of my friends that I've known all my life for over 21 years. And I had a falling out with that friend. And it's almost been like a year from that. And I used to hang out with that person every day, talk to them every day. Now, I'm not gay, right? But I am like still mourning the loss of that friendship, and I would do anything for that friend. Like it's almost it's funny when I speak to a Kim. It's like I broke up from a 20-year relationship, and people don't understand it. Like, oh yeah, friends come and go. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I just got divorced from my
yeah. And I think that's what the movie is tackling, and I think they tackle that then again with Dante and Randall in Clerks too.
Yeah, well, the Dante and Randall thing, yeah, we'll get to that, but I think that's an interesting thing. But it's like, before moving on for this quickly, it's like, if I'm saying like Alyssa could be, she could be the exact same sort of thing that we're talking about here with Banky, you know? Like maybe if she never met Holden, all she ever has eyes for throughout her entire life is chicks, and Holden was the one, you know, one of a couple dudes. You know, because it's like, what is sexuality? What is like love? What is, you know, boxes? Fuck the boxes. You know what I'm saying? Fuck the boxes. There's the quote from the thing, and just, you know, let people be people. So, but that's an interesting thing about this movie is because as much as you can be like, I agree with everything was saying before. This movie wouldn't work releasing now the way it's written, but I still think you can rewatch it, and I think a lot of these characters, the personalities, the way they're written, and the traits, because they're kind of written so in their boxes that's interesting to discuss them and try and like be like, okay, if you were real, sit you down and be like, you need to just open up a little bit and just stop, you know, like you can
yeah, like if you were to rework this movie to be a bit more about that like sexual fluidity and stuff, like that would be actually kind of rad.
Well, there's another character that no one really discusses much from this because it's not one of the main characters. But was it the black gay man?
Hooper X. I love Hooper X. I think he's fantastic. Fantastic.
He's great, and another interesting written character because it's like it's a black gay man who is pretending to be a black macho like gorilla
panther sort of guy.
Panther wielding dude to cover up his not only for his race but also his sexuality so he can make it in the world, you know. And the movie doesn't spend a lot of time on that obviously, but it's definitely interesting viewpoint that's written about in this, and another thing that's kind of way ahead of its time, because you could definitely do a character like that now, I think, and it would still be very fucking relevant, especially in like an industry like the comics industry, because any sort of geek related industry that is still kind of has a connotation of bro culture-ish from the outside, I guess, in a lot of ways. All right, so next thing we'll talk about is the end of the movie. You got to think of this scenario. If they sit down, they do the speech, makes a different speech. I guess you could say he's like a bit more adult about it. Pretend Holden comes in, he's like, I'm sorry. I just had to do some thinking about life, and I did some walks on the beach. Love you, man. Love you. Everyone's like, oh, thank you. Like, do they go happily off, into the sunset? Like, in alternate reality, if he doesn't fuck up majorly at the end of the movie, how's this play out, buddy?
It's totally reparable, I think, in Holden's, like, in Alyssa's mind. Like, if he can just come back and say, look, it doesn't matter. She's already at that point where I love you and you're what I need and you're what I want right now. Who cares what I've done in the past? And if he can come to terms with that, like, and just apologize and go, yeah, right, I was being an idiot. Like, none of that really matters. I think they can move on and get on with it. Like, he just needs to have that conversation with her and actually take the right lesson out of what Silent Bob's story was trying to say. Not, I need a fucking crazy experience and then I can move on too. I need to play catch up. And the conversation I felt was like really unfair, the one he has with Banky, to have with her in the same room. Maybe if he isn't in that state of denial or not ready to open up and I guess come out or anything like that, maybe he doesn't want to do that in front of another person, and maybe that will just scare him off even more.
Yeah.
So if he's going to have that conversation, maybe have that on your own, and maybe have the other one with Alyssa on their own, and then maybe you can bring them together to just like, cool, we're going to be a couple, and I know, I'm going to try and still spend time with you and make all this work and stuff, and you can have that kind of conversation hashing out. So I think absolutely they could have. If it was a different speech, like it could, their whole lives can be completely different.
So alternate reality, they're together. Just if he hadn't have fucked up this. Well, side note, by the way, James Silent Bob reboot comes out, they're together. We'll be fucking redoing the whole thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Add on to this quickly on top. At the end of the movie, because I know a lot of people watch the ending quite differently, I've always viewed it as they never got back together. That's kind of their last moment.
Same,
yeah. I was about to say, okay, you both agree, yeah, because I know a lot of people have.
It's butterfly effect. You look back, but you don't go back.
Yeah, they were they were pivotal for that for me at that time of time of my life, and I learnt my lessons, and then you move away.
Yeah. Ryan, do you think if it goes down different, they actually end up together, or do you think like it was meant to not happen?
It was meant to not happen because the whole film itself is based around Holden's insecurities and how they consume him. And it's one of those things of those insecurities come out like they did in that, or they had him in a different way. So over time, it would have either, it may not have crumbled there, but it would have crumbled later. Because from what we've seen, like the growth within Holden wasn't so extreme that those insecurities wouldn't rear their head again. I don't think he was ready or mature enough to have that relationship with Alyssa. And I don't think in the time period that the movie is given, I don't think he would have been able to jump over those hurdles within that time to successfully continue the relationship.
No. Yeah, I kind of actually side with you where it's kind of this thing where she comes into his life. It's as you was just saying, sometimes you meet people and you're friends for a year, you're friends for a couple of years, you're friends for 6 months, maybe they help shape you in some way or whatever, and then they fuck off and you never see them again, or something like that. That's the same for friendships, work relationships, romantic relationships, however you want to put it. It's kind of like she comes in, they spend however long together, but at the end of the day, they come out and she's happy at the end with her comic and whatever she's going on, and he's happy at the end. He's also a changed person because of her. like a better person.
Well, the end of his monologue says exactly that. He will be forever changed for having known her.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. What either outcome, he has been forever changed.
Just the extra thing they could have done at the end of the movie. I'll tell Kevin Smith needs to George Lucas this shit. Cut to a scene in his apartment where he's got the picture hanging up on his wall.
Big lizard man thing in the sand dune in the background, like
no, he's got the fucking picture that she brought up on the wall, and it like kind of zooms in on it and then goes to credits. I don't know.
Probably why George Lucas's shit. I'm like, no, they don't need to fucking cut Ben Affleck's hand off. Freeze Jason Lee in Carbon Knight. That's not how you end the movie.
Some youngins.
All right, so the last thing I want to quickly talk about for this episode is the fact that this is a viewer skew movie, and that's why we're talking about it. But it doesn't actually feel like one at all. In fact, it's the least viewer skew movie, as far as I'm concerned, of all 6 of the movies in the series. And the only connecting factor, apart from a couple brief mentions and stuff that only real diehard fans would know, like Alyssa's the sister, like she dated the sister of someone else from Mallrats. Like there are names thrown around that if you pay attention and you're a diehard fan, they'll mention stuff. Like another one's the fact she mentions to Holden about how Ben Affleck's character from Mallrats, fucked her and stuff. It's like there are subtle things, but none of them are big enough to stand out to Joe Schmo watching this, apart from obviously the fact that Jane Silent Bob show up in this movie, and they only show up for one scene. So the question is, do you think that having them in this movie, having them be a part of the View Askew universe, having Jane Silent Bob come in and do that one scene works and it's worthwhile, or the movie would have been better if they hadn't have been part of it and maybe that speech had been given by another character and Kevin had kind of just kept this movie off to be its own thing and not part of the universe, or however you want to put it. How do you feel about it, buddy?
It totally could be its own thing without Jay and Silent Bob. You just need another character to give that type of speech to Holden that he completely misinterprets and fucks up. It's only doesn't feel like a part of that universe because of the movie's tone. Like you said, there's all the references there, the Shannon Hamilton thing, fucking the dead guy thing, all that stuff, and it's actually used as a tool for Alyssa and Holden when they were talking in the club. That's what they're kind of really talking about. All these
other characters and
all the character similarities. That's their kind of getting to know each other period, which is quite funny. I don't think it like having Jay and Silent Bob in the movie makes it better, and I don't think removing them and putting other characters in would make it worse or better either. But you could if you wanted to. So,
Ryan, how do you feel?
I think Chasing Amy doesn't need to be in the View Askew universe, but the View Askew universe needs Chasing Amy.
They've got a poet over here.
Like that movie grounds that universe. Like with all the silliness and the over the top, and as next week when we talk about Dogma, with this big grandiose shit that all takes place in this same world, without this grounding point to demonstrate these characters are real, kind of changes everything else around it. But just Chasing Amy in it, fuck no. As I said, you can put anyone else in there and it's fine. Granted, you lose all the references at the start, as you said, in that little bar discussion, but yeah, like that's what it comes down. It helps the overall universe, it helps the overall story, but as a singular entity, it'd be fine without it.
Yeah, I found this an interesting question because when I wrote it down for the show notes, it was only then after I wrote it that I actually started thinking about it a bit more serious. And I think after I wrote the question, I changed my own mind the more I thought about it, because originally I was going to be like, no, it doesn't need to exist. You could just get rid of them. Jane Silent Bob, change it. Like Kevin Smith's actually really good in this. He delivers that monologue. It's like one of the longest monologues, if not the longest. No, it would be the second longest monologue in the movie, I guess, next to like Ben Affleck giving his car speech or whatever. But he's quite good in it. But the important thing I realized after a while was like, wait, in the importance of the View Askew universe, this movie sets up the fact that Jane Silent Bob are comic book characters. Like, how do we retcon this You know, like you can change Jay and Silent Bob out for other characters and have the anyone else give that speech or other characters give that speech and get rid of it. But then I'm like, but in the importance of the View Askew universe, if this movie doesn't introduce the fact that they're turned into comic book characters, we're fucked out of the next movie. We're fucked out of the upcoming reboot movie. Some stuff, you know what I mean? So I'm like, holy shit, this movie may not be like need them or whatever, but this movie actually holds a very important centerpiece for the future of the View Askew universe, which is the comic book character stuff.
Which pretty much just confirms what you said there, Ryan. I loved your it doesn't need it. The universe needs it. I'm like, damn, I almost fell off my chair.
Yeah, exactly. 100% right. The View Askew universe does need this movie for the comic book stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can make that comic book about any other characters they'd want.
It wouldn't matter.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter because it's secondary. It's just an additional layer.
Yeah. Well, as you were saying, it wouldn't matter to this movie. It would matter to the View Askew universe if it was any other comic book character, though. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for this week's episode of Radio Movies. Please be sure to take any trash review when you're leaving your area. You can find Buddy Watson over at dashgamer.com on the Dash Culture podcast every fortnight, talking about pop culture, movies, and gaming. And be sure to follow him on Twitter at BuddyWatson12. You can find Ryan Betson over at youtube.com/thepopculturist, talking all things PlayStation on for the players or wrestling on the young and the wrestlers. And you can follow him on Twitter at HaggardMC. And you can find myself right here on explosionnetwork.com on one of our movie, game, or TV podcasts like Arcade Couch or What Do You Want to Watch? And you can follow me on Twitter at Vivaldil, VIVALADIL. Please be sure to review this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening if you can review stuff on that thing. Or tweet at Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes and tell them we rock, and please send us an early copy of Jay and Silent Bob Reboot so we can watch it for the podcast. The only reason we're actually doing this podcast. It's not really, but that's now a joke, I suppose. Until next week, Snoochie Poochies.
Now that, my friend, is a shared moment.